There's an old theater in the heart of a forgotten town, crumbling stone, shattered windows, and a stage that's never gone dark. They say the curtains still sway, even when there's no wind. The seats creak, even when no one sits. And from time to time, if you listen closely on a dead silent night, you'll hear applause. Slow, deliberate, as if the ghosts are still watching a show that never ends. This is the story of the Crimson Veil Theater. Once the grandest stage in the region, now a cursed, rotting husk echoing with screams, whispers, and footsteps that don't belong to the living. But why? What happened that night, long ago, when the final performance was abruptly interrupted? And what kind of power keeps dragging people back into its velvet cloak nightmare? Would you ever dare to sit through a play you can never leave? If you're into stories that twist your spine, stir your soul, and make you question what's lurking in the shadows, then this is your seat, front row. Before we begin, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with someone who thinks they're brave enough to watch this alone in the dark. Now, the curtains rise. The rain hadn't stopped in 3 days. A dense, choking mist hung low across the skeletal remains of Holloway Town, where rust-eaten signs still creaked in the wind, and glassless windows stared blankly like open wounds. Most of the town had been abandoned for decades, claimed by time, mold, and a quiet kind of rot. But at its center stood the Crimson Veil Theater, tall and defiant, untouched by the decay that devoured everything around it. Alex Mercer had heard the stories his whole life, stories whispered at midnight slumber parties, passed from one daring teenager to another like a cursed torch. The Crimson Veil wasn't just haunted, it was hungry. It took people. Not just their bodies, but something deeper, something colder. And once it had you, it never let go. But Alex was tired of stories. He needed proof. Proof for the podcast he'd started with his sister, Riley, and their childhood friend, Malik. Echo Eyes, they called it. True crime, paranormal investigations, and urban legends. It was doing okay, but okay wasn't enough anymore. They needed something big, something terrifying, something real. And the Crimson Veil, it was perfect. "I'm telling you, we're going to regret this," Riley muttered as they pulled up in their muddy Jeep, tires sinking into the saturated earth just outside the overgrown theater courtyard. Her voice was tight, her breath fogging the windshield. Alex glanced at her from the driver's seat. "We've been to abandoned hospitals, asylums, and actual crime scenes. This is just a dusty old playhouse." "It's not the building I'm worried about," Riley replied, eyes fixed on the looming facade. "It's the thing inside. Legend says the last play they performed was The Hanging Bride." Malik chimed in from the back seat, scrolling through an old newspaper article on his cracked tablet. "Opening night, the lead actress actually died on stage. Some say it was an accident, others say it wasn't, but the show kept going." "What do you mean, Rinam?" Riley asked, twisting around. "I mean people clapped while she dangled. The rest of the cast kept acting like nothing was wrong, like they couldn't see her swinging just a few feet away." A long silence followed. Alex opened the door and stepped into the rain. The theater loomed before them, 3 stories high, its once grand entrance now a yawning black hole. Vines twisted up the pillars like choking fingers. Statues of tragic muses flanked the door, their faces cracked in weeping black moss. They made their way up the slick stone steps, flashlights barely cutting through the mist. With each footstep, the ground seemed to groan beneath them. The doors were already open. Inside, the air was heavy, thick with dust, dampness, and something metallic. The grand foyer was choked in shadows. Red velvet curtains hung like coagulated blood. The scent of mildew and ancient perfume lingered, as if "This place is insane," Malik whispered, swinging his flashlight across the walls. Murals of costume actors danced along the curved ceiling, their painted eyes wide with frozen emotion. Suddenly, Riley froze. "Did you hear that?" Alex turned. "What?" A voice, whispering. They all stood still. For a heartbeat, there was only silence. Then, a faint shh, like breath across the back of the neck. Malik shivered. "This place better be haunted." I want those downloads. They explored deeper, stepping carefully across warped floorboards. The main hall opened up ahead, a cavernous chamber with rows of dust-covered seats, all facing a towering stage veiled in crimson curtains. Broken chandeliers dangled from the ceiling like bone spiders. The echo of their steps bounced back at them in strange, stuttering rhythms, as if something else was walking just a step behind. One had just left moments ago. They set up their, "We'll do a full sit-in," Alex said, checking his camera. "Lights out. See if anything talks to us." As the last light flicked off, the darkness pressed in like a living thing. Minutes passed, nothing but breathing. Then, the stage lights flickered on. The group jumped. "What the hell?" Riley hissed. "I didn't touch anything." Alex swore, eyes wide. A record player crackled to life somewhere in the distance. Soft violin music began to play, a haunting, discordant melody that filled the theater like smoke. The crimson curtain on stage twitched. Malik pointed his flashlight. Too late. The curtain parted on its own. Behind it stood a woman in an old Victorian dress. Her skin was pale, stretched tight over her bones. Her eyes were black as coal. A noose hung around her neck, and her head tilted slightly to one side. She opened her mouth, but instead of words, a dry rasp escaped. It was the sound of wind through dead trees. Her fingers lifted slowly, pointing directly at Alex. "Turn it off," Riley whispered, reaching for the gear. "I can't," Malik said, voice trembling. "It's frozen." The woman stepped forward. One slow step. Two. With each step, the music grew louder, more distorted. The seats behind the trio shifted, as if unseen bodies were sitting down to watch. Then came the applause, soft, deliberate, and scattered. From nowhere. From everywhere. Alex bolted to the aisle. "We're leaving. Now!" But the doors were gone. Where the entrance had been was now a brick wall. Seamless. Old. As if it had always been there. "No, no, no," Riley whispered, pounding on it. "This wasn't here. This wasn't here." From the stage, the woman began to laugh, a high, shrieking sound like glass breaking in slow motion. "Run!" Malik screamed. They tore through the side exit, slamming through backstage corridors lined with moth-eaten costumes and splintered props. The lights overhead sparked and burst as they passed beneath them. Somewhere behind, the laughter followed, growing louder, echoing unnaturally. They burst into a room filled with cracked mirrors. The reflections were wrong. Their faces shifted, grinning when they weren't. Eyes blinking out of sync. Alex stared at one mirror. In it, he was still standing in the front row, staring at the woman on stage. But he wasn't here anymore. He reached out to touch the glass, when a hand reached back. A hand from inside the mirror. "Don't look at them!" Riley shouted, yanking him away. They kicked open another door and stumbled into the makeup room, breathless. "Okay," Malik gasped. "We need a plan. We're not just dealing with a haunting. This place, it's alive. It wants us here." The sound of footsteps echoed down the hall. Then a voice, low and cracked, whispered, "Act 1, complete." The makeup room was suffocating, lit only by the twitching red glow of the exit sign above a back door that refused to open, no matter how hard they shoved. The air reeked of decayed grease paint and something sour beneath the surface, like sweat and long coagulated blood. Alex slammed his shoulder against the door again. It didn't budge. It sealed, like it's part of the wall. Riley stood in front of a shattered vanity, gripping a broken eyeliner pencil like a weapon. "Whatever this place is, it's watching us, and I think it's changing." Malik ran his hands through his curls, pacing. That voice said, "Act 1 complete." "What does that mean? Are we part of some twisted play?" "No," Alex muttered. "We're the audience, and the cast." The overhead lights buzzed once, then snapped off, plunging the room into near-total darkness. Only the flickering red glow of the exit sign remained. From the hallway outside came a rhythmic thumping, like heels on hardwood. Slow, deliberate. Then, singing, a woman's voice, off-key, ghostly soft. "She waits behind the crimson veil, her heart a stage of sorrow." Riley pressed her back to the wall. eyes darting to the door. Where's it coming from? Everywhere, Alex whispered. The walls began to tremble. Dust trickled from the ceiling. One of the mirrors cracked straight down the middle with a shrill ping, and just beyond it, another face appeared. Bloated, grinning. Its eyes were empty sockets leaking black fluid. Go! Malik shouted. They threw open the only remaining door and spilled out into a narrow corridor lined with peeling wallpaper and doors that led to dressing rooms. The hall stretched much longer than it should have, impossibly so, fading into a vanishing point far beyond natural architecture. I swear this wasn't here before, Riley breathed, staring down the endless hallway. We're walking through the blueprints of a nightmare. Alex took the lead, camera in hand, filming through trembling fingers. Keep moving. There has to be an exit somewhere. They moved fast, passing doors labeled with strange, faded names. Madame Greaves, Mr. Harrow, the fiddler, the silent child. Each door had scratches around the knob, as if something had tried desperately to escape. Suddenly, one door creaked open on its own, just a few inches. Riley stopped. No. It could be a way through, Alex said, already reaching for it. It could be a trap, Malik snapped. The singing grew louder, the same verse again. She waits behind the crimson veil, her heart a stage of sorrow. This time it was closer. Alex pushed the door fully open. Inside was a dressing room, untouched by time. A golden gown was laid out across a red velvet chaise lounge. Makeup brushes rested beside an antique mirror, with lights still glowing faintly. On the counter sat a single photograph. Alex stepped inside, picked it up. It was a cast photo, dated March 13th, 1931. A full ensemble dressed in regal costumes, smiling stiffly. But their eyes, were blackened out with ink. Alex flipped it over, written in faded handwriting. To my darling, my muse, let the show never end. Suddenly, the vanity lights flared bright white. The mirror reflected the dressing room, but not the three of them. In the reflection stood the entire cast from the photo, staring directly at them. One of them stepped forward in the mirror, a man with a curled mustache and theater cape. He smiled wide, revealing too many teeth, and reached through the glass. The mirror shattered outward. Run! They bolted down the hallway, ducking as doors flung open violently on both sides. Screams erupted from within, each one different. A child's sobbing, a man's laughter, a woman's operatic wail cut short by choking. One of the doors burst open beside Malik. A hand shot out, pale, twisted, with long, blackened fingernails, and latched onto his arm. Help! Alex lunged, grabbed Malik's other arm, and yanked with everything he had. Riley stomped the hand with her boot, crunching bone. It let go with a shriek that tore the air. They ran until they couldn't feel their legs. Finally, they stumbled into another large chamber. At first glance, it looked like a storage room. Rusted spotlights hung from chains. Mannequins dressed in opera outfits leaned against the walls, some missing limbs, some with mouths painted too wide. But something was off. The mannequins were watching them. Back away slow, Alex whispered. One of the mannequins moved its head, just a twitch. Malik pointed his flashlight at it. No, no, no. The others started shifting too. Tiny movements, a foot turning, a shoulder jerking, a painted-on smile widening. Then, movement. All at once. They lunged. Go! The trio sprinted through the room, dodging, grasping arms, and crashing props. One mannequin tackled Riley, sending them both to the floor. It clawed at her face, snapping its wooden jaws with splinters flying. Get off her! Alex ripped a sandbag from a pulley and swung it into the mannequin's torso. It exploded into fragments. Riley scrambled up, bleeding from a shallow cut across her cheek. They ducked through a curtain and found themselves, without warning, back in the main auditorium. The seats were full. Rows and rows of spectators sat motionless, watching the empty stage. Men in tuxedos, women in gowns, all dead, some missing parts, some fused to the chairs, but all clapping in slow, lifeless rhythm. A new voice echoed from above, a man's voice, slick and theatrical. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. From the shadows above, a figure stepped into a spotlight on the balcony, tall, gaunt, dressed in a blood-red tailcoat with a porcelain mask covering half his face. A thin top hat sat perched atop his head. I am your host, your guide, your director, and tonight we begin Act Two. The stage below lit up, and there, center spotlight, stood Alex. But not the Alex beside Riley and Malik. This one moved like a puppet on strings, limbs jerking awkwardly. His eyes were dull. His mouth was sewn into a smile. Alex stared at his own body, frozen in horror. What the hell is that? The director grinned from above. The show always requires replacements. You, my dear audience, have been cast. The applause grew louder. Lights burst on overhead, bathing them all in gold. The curtains rose again, and somewhere behind it, something massive moved. Alex lunged, grabbing Malik's other arm. Pull! The hand was strong, inhumanly strong, its skin cold and rubbery, like wet clay. Malik screamed as it yanked him toward the threshold of the dressing room. From within, more arms reached out, grasping, clawing, writhing like worms in a pit. The thing behind the door hissed a single guttural word. Encore! Riley rushed in, swinging the broken eyeliner pencil like a blade. She stabbed the pale hand squarely in its wrist. It recoiled with a screech that rattled the very walls, jerking back into the darkness. Malik collapsed into Alex's arms, his face pale, sleeve torn, 3 deep scratches carved into his forearm. No more side trips, Riley snapped. We keep going until we find a real exit. They sprinted down the endless corridor as the walls began to twist inward, literally folding and bending like paper. Light fixtures swayed violently overhead, blinking in and out as the ceiling breathed in slow, rhythmic pulses. The hallway behind them folded into itself, swallowed by the dark. They reached a set of stairs, spiraling downward into the unknown. Malik hesitated. Basement? Alex nodded grimly. Let's go. They descended fast, each step creaking louder than the last. As they went deeper, the air grew colder, heavier, and thicker with the smell of dust, ash, and burnt silk. The basement level opened into a vast understage maze. Storage rooms, set designs, prop cages, and forgotten scripts stacked like gravestones. Water dripped steadily from unseen pipes, echoing like a metronome. Riley's flashlight caught movement. In the far corner, a figure sat on a stool, dressed in a mime's costume, face painted white, a single black tear drawn beneath one eye. The figure didn't move, didn't breathe. Alex lifted his camera, zoomed in. The mime blinked. Oh, hell no, Riley said, backing away. Then it stood, unnaturally slow. It tilted its head, first left, then right, like it was studying them. And then it stepped forward. Its feet made no sound, even on the creaking boards. Back, back, Malik hissed, gripping a rusted metal rod from the wall. The mime kept coming. It pointed to Alex, then to Riley, then to itself. A twisted pantomime. It's casting us, Alex realized, his voice nearly a whisper. It's choosing roles. The mime lunged, silent as death. They scattered. Alex ducked behind a pillar of costume crates. Riley sprinted toward a locked cage marked stage tools. Malik slammed the rod across the mime's chest, knocking it back. But the thing had no weight, like it was made of fabric and hate. It absorbed the blow, twisted midair, and landed upright again. Alex darted for an old lighting rig and yanked a lever. Sparks erupted overhead. A heavy sandbag broke loose and came crashing down, smashing the mime's head into the floor. It twitched, paused, then crumbled into a pile of dust and moth wings. What was that? Riley panted. Part of the act, Alex said. We're not in a haunted theater. We're in the show. A metal groan echoed through the basement. Behind them, a set of double doors opened by themselves. Beyond them, a spiral staircase glowed with flickering lanterns, beckoning. Third time's the charm? Malik asked, nursing his bleeding arm. Better than staying down here with the ash clown, Riley muttered. They climbed. Each step up made the air warmer, thicker. By the time they reached the top, sweat coated their skin, and their ears were ringing with distant organ music. They emerged into the orchestra pit directly below the stage. Except now, it was different. The theater was full. Every seat was occupied by shadowed figures, silent, unmoving. their faces obscured by black lace veils and rotting playbills. "Tell me this is a hallucination," Riley whispered. "Nope," Malik muttered. "This is real. Too real." From above, a voice thundered, deep and resonant. Act 2. The audience arrives. Spotlights burst on, blinding them. A massive curtain lifted to reveal the stage. Set now as a twisted parlor room. Furniture made of bones and fabric that bled when touched. A lone man in a tattered tuxedo stood center stage. He bowed deeply, then gestured at the trio. "Welcome, dear players," he crooned. "You've arrived just in time for the next performance." A gust of wind blew from nowhere. The trio was lifted, levitated, onto the stage by invisible hands. Their feet touched down with a soft thud onto the boards, but they couldn't move. Their muscles froze like puppets on tight strings. The tuxedoed man paced between them. "Long ago," he said, "this theater sought only adoration. But when the lights dimmed and the crowds vanished, it grew hungry. Now it feeds on presence, on fear, on performance." He stopped in front of Riley. "You are the skeptic." He tapped her forehead. "You shall play the doubting maiden." To Malik, "You are the scholar, the reluctant prophet." To Alex, "And you, the curious herald, always poking, always recording, always watching." A marionette string dropped from above and tied itself around Alex's wrist. The man clapped. The audience erupted into silent applause, the sound of hands clapping without skin. "Let the next scene commence," the tuxedoed man declared, vanishing into smoke. The stage rotated. Walls rose around them, wooden, shifting, forming a warped version of Riley's childhood bedroom. Her old posters, stuffed toys, and even her scratched mirror were there, though wrong. The air turned icy. A lullaby music box played itself on the nightstand. Riley gasped. "This is my room, but from before the fire." Alex scanned the area. How would it know that? A closet door creaked open. Inside was a child, hair charred, eyes hollow, wearing a scorched dress Riley hadn't seen in over a decade. "Riley, why did you leave me in the flames?" the girl whispered. "No." Riley shook her head. "You're not real." The girl stepped forward, flesh peeling from her face. "You watched me burn." The lights flickered violently. Malik pulled at the walls, trying to break them down, but they were sealed. Alex turned his camera toward the girl. It melted in his hands. The girl shrieked, her voice 1,000 glass shards slicing through the air. "Get out," Riley screamed. The walls collapsed. They were back on stage. The audience clapped louder. One by one, they stood, revealing faces they recognized. Dead relatives, old teachers, former friends, and among them were the trio themselves, smiling, applauding, trapped, watching. The applause stopped, not gradually, not with fading hands, but all at once, like a conductor had snapped his baton in half. Every figure in the audience sat back down, in perfect unison. No shifting, no breathing, just stillness. Riley's knees buckled. She dropped to the stage floor, panting, her eyes locked on the ghostly reflection of herself, clapping in the second row. I saw me. Malik crouched beside her, gripping her shoulder. "This place, this thing, it's not just messing with our minds. It's pulling pieces of us, twisting them into the show." Alex stood center stage, eyes scanning the velvet curtained balconies above. His hand was blistered from the melted remains of his camera, now useless. "Every time we survive a scene, it takes more." The chandeliers above flickered red, and with a loud clang, the floor split beneath them. The stage groaned like a living beast. As massive panels rotated, Alex grabbed Malik's arm, just in time to stop him from falling into the dark void beneath, where stage gears churned with a rhythm too fast, too angry. The room around them shifted once more. The theater disappeared. They now stood in an alleyway, grimy brick walls pressed tight around them, towering like a labyrinth. The moon above was massive and blood red, casting shadows that moved against the wind. A neon sign buzzed above a door behind them. The Playhouse, the same name etched above the theater's real entrance in town. Except this wasn't the same place. It was older, wetter, breathing,
A whistle echoed down the alley. Sharp, mechanical. Riley turned slowly. What was that? Out of the shadows rolled an old organ grinder cart. The music played itself off-key, distorted, and the crank turned without a hand. Following behind it was a thing with twisted legs and a mask made of melted porcelain, painted with a permanent grin. It danced, jerkily, like a puppet on tangled strings. I am the fool, it rasped, voice like nails in water. Come to jest, come to jeer, come to clear your fear. The alley behind them sealed shut with a slam. Back inside, Malik shouted, trying the door beneath the neon. Locked. The fool's legs bent backward as it lunged. Alex grabbed a trash can lid and swung. The metal caved into the fool's face, but the thing laughed high and jittery as its body crumpled, only to reinflate seconds later like a balloon. Try harder, it cackled. The show must go on. Riley smashed the window beside the locked door with a rusted pipe, screaming as glass sliced her palm. Malik helped her through, while Alex kept the fool at bay with broken bricks and debris. The creature sang as it danced, voice echoing through the alley. A step, a slip, a bloody trip. The audience wants more. A scream, a plea. Now bow to me before I raise the floor. Inside, the trio stumbled into a dusty backstage dressing room, but this one was twisted in time. Props from centuries past were scattered about, powdered wigs, rusted rapiers, makeup with leeches, still writhing in the jars. Riley bled onto the floor. We need to stop the bleeding, quick. Malik grabbed a dusty towel, wrapping her hand while muttering, we need to get out of here. It's dragging us through scenes, forcing us to relive our worst fears. Alex looked around the room. Every wall had dozens of posters, past performances, show titles that made no sense, the silence between screams, the dagger waltz, echoes of a dying laugh. But one stood out, starring Riley Thorne, Malik James, Alex Redden, directed by the audience. Riley's voice cracked. It's already written. A door slammed open at the far end. The fool stood in the doorway, clapping slowly, now wearing a new mask, this one weeping, black tears dripping from the eye holes. Time for Act 3, it whispered, the intermission of regret. The world blinked, and they were no longer in the room. They were seated in theater chairs, separate rows, isolated, immobile. Before each of them, the curtain rose, but each saw something different. Alex's scene. He sat in a film editing room, surrounded by screens. Each one showed him different versions, screaming, crying, sometimes. One monitor blinked to life, showing a scene of Riley and Malik cornered by the fool. Why didn't you help them? A voice asked. Alex tried to speak, but his lips were sewn shut. The camera panned closer. In it, he saw his own eyes, but they were no longer human. Malik's scene. He was back in his childhood church. Empty pews, a pulpit with red velvet, and his father, dead 10 years now, standing in a preacher's robe. You never believed, his father said, and now look where you are, trapped in damnation. Malik tried to run, but the pews locked together like jaws, holding him in place. His father opened the Bible. It screamed. Riley's scene. She stood in a burning house, not just any house, hers. The one that had burned down when she was 12, taking her sister with it. Come play with me, Riley, said her sister's voice. The fire peeled away the walls, revealing a stage beneath the flames. Spotlights glared down. She saw herself at age 12, curled in a corner, singing the lullaby from before. The adult Riley screamed and tried to run, but her feet were nailed to the floor. Then, blackout, all three awoke on stage again, together, but different. Their clothes had changed, costumes now, Malik in a prophet's robe, Riley in a Gothic Victorian dress, Alex in a herald's uniform with a cracked crown. Before them stood a new figure, a girl, no older than 15, dressed in a ballerina's outfit. Her eyes were missing and her lips were sewn. She danced, slowly, painfully, with each pirouette, her limbs cracked more, until they hung at wrong angles. Her feet bled on the stage, but still she danced. The audience wept. The girl stopped, then opened her mouth. No sound came out, only a long string of black thread slithered from her lips, and slithered toward Riley. Riley tried to back away, but the thread lashed around her throat. Malik grabbed a prop sword and sliced through it. The girl fell, the lights exploded, and a deep voice rumbled through the smoke. Act 4 will commence. When the final curtain falls, the trio stood alone again, except they were behind the curtains. Something massive was breathing. A sound like thunder rippled through the stage rafters. Slow, ragged breathing from behind the velvet curtain. It wasn't just heavy, it was deliberate. Like whatever stood on the other side was waiting, deciding if it should emerge. Malik held the dull prop sword tight. I'm starting to wonder if dying here would actually end the nightmare. Riley touched the stage floor with trembling fingers. What if it doesn't? What if dying here just makes us part of the cast forever? Alex's voice was hoarse, almost lost. Then we don't die, we act our way out. A faint ding rang out across the theater. The curtain didn't rise this time. It fell, straight down, vanishing into the floor. And standing where it had hung was a giant figure cloaked in rotted red drapes, stitched from theater curtains soaked in centuries of dust and blood. Its arms were elongated, fingers fused with marionette strings that led skyward, disappearing into the shadows above. Its head was a mask, a massive rotted porcelain tragedy mask, cracked through the mouth. The smile was painted on, but the horror was alive beneath. The lights dimmed, and a glowing title projected itself onto the smoke above the stage. Act 4, the director arrives. The audience stood again, their applause rising to a fever pitch. Though not a single hand moved, the figure raised one long puppet string-fused hand and pointed to the trio. Rehearsals are over. It boomed, voice layered in a dozen tones. Male, female, child, elder, all speaking as one. It is time for the true performance. With a whip of its arm, the marionette strings attached to its body launched toward them. They moved like vipers, slicing through the air with whistling speed. Alex ducked. One caught his sleeve and yanked, tearing fabric but sparing his skin. Malik swung the sword, cutting two threads that zipped toward his chest. The sword sparked on contact, steel against something not quite real. Riley wasn't fast enough. A string wrapped around her ankle and yanked her into the air. She screamed as she flipped end over end, dangling upside down like a stage doll. The director cackled, a sound like applause played in reverse, and dragged her higher toward the catwalks. Riley, Alex shouted. Without thinking, he leapt for the nearest rope, climbing furiously. The set pieces swayed, nearly collapsing as the puppeteer yanked Riley toward a suspended cage made of golden stage lights. Malik stayed below, cutting at the threads, trying to tangle around him, screaming, "Move, Alex! Move!" Alex reached the catwalks, grabbing a loose floodlight and swinging it like a pendulum. As Riley passed, he jumped, slamming into her midair. The impact knocked her free from the thread, both of them crashing through a black curtain and onto a net below. The director shrieked, the mask cracked deeper down the cheek. Then the stage began to tilt. Gravity shifted. Everything, the props, the curtains, even the audience, began sliding toward a black hole that had appeared at center stage. Malik stabbed his sword into the floorboards, grabbing onto a support beam. This isn't a stage anymore, it's a trap. Alex and Riley scrambled to their feet just before the net gave way. They rolled, grasped onto a twisted lighting rig, as the floor around them was devoured by shadow. The black hole pulsed, growing. From within the dark, hands began reaching out, hundreds of them, grasping, begging, some missing fingers, others wearing rings from centuries past. A low chant echoed from the pit, "Join us, join us, join us." The audience chanted it too, over and over, "Join us." Suddenly the hole vanished. The stage was whole again, but different. Now it resembled a dinner theater. Tables filled the space between the actors and the audience, and seated at those tables were versions of themselves. Alex saw himself, clean-shaven and calm, sipping wine from a silver goblet. Riley's double was laughing, wearing a dress she'd never owned, her eyes hollow. Malik's version looked older, worn but smiling, until he saw the real Malik and his smile twisted into something inhuman. A bell rang. The food arrived, carried by eyeless waiters dressed in blood-soaked tuxedos. The plates were covered in silver lids. The doubles clapped, and the lids were lifted. On each plate was a piece of them. Alex's head, Riley's severed hands, Malik's heart still beating. Their doubles applauded. The real Malik backed away, nearly vomit. This place is feeding off us, off our terror. It's turning it into art for these freaks. Suddenly the entire room turned dark. The stage floor split again, and the trio fell plummeted into a pit of feathers, velvet, and shattered glass. They landed hard, bruised and gasping, surrounded by mannequins dressed in torn costumes. And all of them were smiling. A projector flickered on behind them. It displayed a film of them. Every scene they'd lived through since entering the theater. Riley dangling by the ankle, Alex slamming into her midair, Malik alone in the church. They watched themselves suffer. Then new footage, future footage. Alex getting impaled through the chest by a lighting rig. Riley caught in a burning Malik standing alone on the stage, bowing, while his friends lay dead behind him. Turn it off, Riley screamed, smashing the projector with a broken mannequin arm. Darkness again, until a spotlight clicked on, illuminating an old man in a director's chair, cigarette in hand, wearing a mask of sewn-together ticket stubs. I've been directing for centuries, he said calmly. But you three, you've got something special. He stood, walking toward them with jerking, exaggerated steps. Everyone plays their part. Most don't even realize they're acting. But you, he paused to smile. You're aware. That makes it so much more delicious. Who are you? Alex hissed. I was once like you. Then the show took me in. I became its voice, its vessel. It doesn't want endings. It wants performances. It wants eternity. He reached into his coat, pulling out 3 masks. White. Blank. Waiting. These are your roles now. He tossed them. Riley slapped hers away. We're not actors in your nightmare. Oh, he smiled. But you are. And the next act is the revelation. The floor beneath them rose like a platform. When the lights returned, they were back on stage. The audience stood, clapping. But this time, they weren't silent. They chanted, "Begin Act 5. And all around the theater, the walls began to bleed.
Blood trickled from the walls like crimson tears. It dripped onto the velvet seats, smeared the golden railings, and pooled at the feet of the audience, who now chanted louder, louder. Begin Act 5. Begin Act 5. Then silence. A single spotlight snapped on, illuminating the center of the stage. It wasn't pointed at Alex, Riley, or Malik. It was aimed at a fourth figure, a child. Thin, fragile, with long tangled hair covering their face, dressed in an ancient costume, a jester's outfit, torn and stained, bells rusted with age. The child raised their head and revealed a face sewn shut at the mouth, but eyes wide and alive, brimming with terror. Behind the child, a giant book fell from above, slamming into the stage and cracking the boards. On the front, in red ink, Act 5, the child who would not bow. The director's voice boomed from somewhere unseen, an orphan of the theater, a soul that refuses its cue. And now, the cast shall decide their fate. The book opened on its own, pages flipped wildly, faster than any hand could manage. Then it stopped, on a sketch. Riley, holding a dagger, standing over the child. No, she whispered, backing away. I won't. I don't care what the script says. The spotlight shifted to her. Audience members gasped, some clutching imaginary pearls, others nodding in slow approval. Their hands began to twitch, as if holding invisible strings, like they were controlling the scene. Riley's hands trembled, and yet they moved, toward the dagger lying center stage. No, no, I'm not doing this, she cried, struggling against her own limbs. It's making me. Alex and Malik ran to her, each grabbing an arm, holding her back from the weapon. We write our own roles, Malik shouted. We're not just characters in some sick script.
The child took a step forward, still silent, still trembling. Suddenly spotlights surrounded them, dozens. The entire stage became a battlefield of light, and within the blinding glow, figures stepped forward. Former cast members, old, rotting, wearing masks of every era, opera masks, clown faces, kabuki paint, masquerade visors. They clapped and advanced. "You will perform," they chanted, voices like paper tearing. "You will obey." Alex grabbed a lighting rig and swung it at the closest one, a harlequin with empty eye sockets. The mask shattered, revealing a skull that screamed before crumbling into dust. Malik smashed a chair across another's face. The impact knocked loose its jaw, revealing rows of rusted theater nails in place of teeth. Riley, panting, wrestled her hand back from the dagger. "They want us to kill the child. That's the scene. If we don't, what happens?" The director's voice returned, closer now. "Then the theater consumes you, piece by piece." Alex turned to the child. "There has to be a out. You know something, don't you?" The child looked up and nodded. Without a word, they pointed toward the balcony. The old box reserved for the theater's founder, the one sealed off for over a century. "The founder's box," Riley muttered. "There's something up there." They ran. Behind them, the former cast surged forward, in a wave of stitched flesh and broken applause. The theater warped as they moved, hallways expanding, stairs twisting into loops, props raining from above, like falling debris. But the child led them, silent, determined. They reached the spiral staircase. At the top, a golden door stood, waiting, engraved with ancient theater runes. Alex pushed it open, and inside was a room untouched by time. Red velvet, antique mirrors, a single dressing table with a candle still burning. But what drew their eyes wasn't the beauty. It was the mirror, because it didn't reflect. It reflected three different people, free souls trapped in chains, screaming silently behind the glass. "The original cast," Malik breathed. "The ones who disappeared during the grand opening. They've been trapped here the whole time." The mirror shimmered, showing other faces, dozens, maybe hundreds. All former actors, all prisoners of the performance. "We're not just being haunted," Riley said. "We're being auditioned." Suddenly, the child stepped into the center of the room and held up a small silver key. It glowed white-hot. Alex recognized it. "That's the key from the founder's portrait downstairs. The one hanging in the lobby. The key to the director's quarters." Riley realized. Before they could act, the mirror cracked. Bang! A hand burst through the glass, grabbing Malik by the throat. He gagged, struggling as skeletal arms reached out, trying to drag him into the glass. Alex lunged and pulled with everything he had. Riley grabbed a candelabra and smashed the mirror's frame. Screaming erupted from within. The child held up the key again, and the room shook. The back wall slid open, revealing a hidden passage, a stone corridor lined with theater posters, made of stitched skin and written in blood. They entered without a word. It was cold, the air reeking of sulfur and decayed velvet. At the end stood an old wooden door, the director's quarters. The child handed the key to Alex, then turned and faced the hallway. "I think they're staying behind," Riley whispered. The child reached up and tore the stitches from their mouth, and finally spoke. "Don't become like them." They slammed the passage shut behind the trio. Just as pounding hands began to hammer on the outside, Alex inserted the key. The door unlocked with a click, and inside was not what they expected. A vast chamber, circular, endless, with rows of floating theater seats, spiraling up into a void, and in the center a throne, made of stage equipment, masks and shattered spotlights. Upon it sat the true director. No mask, no string, only a face with 1,000 eyes, and a voice that vibrated through the marrow. "I've been watching you," it said, voice like 1,000 echoes. "The audience loves you." Riley stepped forward, shaking. "We didn't come for applause. We came for the director's smile cracked across a too-wide face. "Then perform one final act. And maybe, just maybe, I'll let one of you leave." The throne began to rise, and the room began to change again. Props flew into place, Lights swirled. A script appeared in their hands, ink still wet. Alex opened his copy and went pale. It's us killing each other. Alex held the script in trembling hands, his eyes glued to the words scrawled in bleeding ink. His own name, his lines, his fate, written with terrifying precision. Every movement, every scream, every betrayal, it was all laid out like prophecy. Riley and Malik read theirs in silence. Each page dripped a faint red, the scent of iron clinging to the air. As they turned the pages, the words began to shift, rewriting themselves in real time, morphing to their thoughts. It was reading them. Alex looked up at the director, whose throne now floated high above like a god surveying its cast. "This is insane," Alex said. "We're not playing this scene. Don't be foolish." The director replied, its thousand eyes blinking out of sync. "You've already played it, many times. You just haven't remembered yet." The walls of the chamber rippled. Screens emerged, flashing scenes from their childhoods. Moments of déjà vu, dreams they never understood. Nightmares with curtains and applause. The theater had touched them long before they arrived. Malik flung his script to the ground. "I'm done. I'll die before I hurt either of them." The director leaned forward, lips curled back. "Then die, spectacularly." The lights snapped off. A bell rang. Act 6. The Survivor's Soliloquy. A spotlight crashed down directly onto Malik. He stood alone, surrounded by darkness. Stage fog hissing around his feet. A single chair waited in front of him. On it, a noose made of red velvet. "What the hell?" he muttered, backing away. The audience materialized around him again, silent, nodding in approval, as if they knew what he had to do. "No!" Riley screamed from the shadows. "This isn't his story. We write the ending." The director laughed from above. "But what is a tragedy without sacrifice?" Malik grabbed the noose, stared at it, then looked up at the ceiling where the rigging creaked. Waiting, he held it a moment longer, then hurled it into the audience. A chain reaction ignited. The audience combusted, rose bursting into blue flame, their faces contorting in agony and applause at once. The inferno danced across the seats, burning everything in a spiral around Malik. But the flames didn't touch him. They obeyed him. They fed on fear, Malik whispered. "So let's feed them something else." He raised his arms. The fire responded, roaring upward. The blaze licked the edge of the floating throne. The director hissed, recoiling. "You would defy your role," it snarled. "You are not the writer." "No," Malik replied, eyes glowing orange with the firelight. "But I'm not your puppet either." From the smoke, Alex and Riley reappeared. They'd broken the set apart using lighting poles and shattered scenery as weapons. Riley dragged a chain, wrapped in barbed wire. Alex carried a spotlight mounted on a pole, its beam blazing like a torch. "You've made us actors in your nightmare," Alex growled. "Now we're going off script." The floating throne began to descend, the director's many eyes twitching in panic. Its throne started to fracture, splinters of stage props falling like glass. "No, you belong to the theater now. You cannot escape your curtain call." Riley swung the chain. The barbs caught on one of the director's arms, ripping it downward, spraying black smoke and echoing screams into the air. The director screeched, voice fracturing into radio static and reversed hymns. Alex aimed the spotlight straight into its face. "You want to perform? Here's your damn climax." He flipped the switch. The light burst into pure white. The throne shattered. The director screamed and fell, not into flames, but into a gaping stage trapdoor beneath its throne. It plummeted into darkness, 1,000 hands clawing upward as it sank, dragging it down like the curtain falling on a failed act. Everything stopped. No noise, no fire, just silence. Then, a soft ding. The stage lights came on gently, normal, warm. They looked around. The chamber had turned into a familiar theater again. Simple red velvet chairs, gold trim and a quiet hush in the air. The stage curtains fluttered. A man in a gray suit stepped forward from the wings. No mask, no strings. He looked ordinary human. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said calmly, looking at no one and everyone, "thank you for joining us for this evening's performance. The cast will now exit the stage." Alex narrowed his eyes, "Who are you?" The man smiled. "I'm just the usher. I make sure every show begins and ends." He stepped aside, revealing a hallway beyond the stage, lined with lights leading to a single exit sign. "A real exit," Riley gasped. "It's open." Malik didn't move. "It's never that simple." The usher spoke again. "Only one cast member may exit per performance. Theater policy." The exit light dimmed slightly. One of them could leave. The rest would remain. "No," Riley whispered. "We've been through hell together. We're not choosing." "If you don't," the usher said with a nod, "the curtain falls, permanently, and no one leaves. The choice must be made." Malik turned to Alex. "We can't kill each other. We've come too far." Riley shook her head. "Then we find another way. There has to be another." Alex clenched his fists. "There is. We make one." The usher turned, now holding a scroll. He unraveled it, revealing a blank script. "No words, just waiting. The theater will allow it," he said. "A final act. But only if you perform it well enough to earn your freedom." A final act. Unwritten. The audience seats began to fill again, one by one, not with the monstrous figures, but with versions of themselves. Alex as a child, Riley in high school, Malik with his mother, all watching, all silent. They had become the cast, the writers, and now the audience. A single spotlight illuminated center stage. The usher bowed. "Begin when ready." A shiver of tension rippled through the stage as the three stood in silence, the blank script hovering in the usher's hands. Like a sacred relic, the air had changed. Less oppressive but no less suffocating. This was their final chance to take control or lose everything. Alex stepped forward, reaching for the blank parchment. His fingers brushed the page, and instantly, words began to bleed into the paper. Not in ink, in his own blood. Lines etched themselves from the cuts appearing on his fingertips, as if the page demanded sacrifice to create. Malik and Riley reached out to steady him, but he waved them off. "No more stalling," he said. "We write our story now." The lights dimmed around them. The audience, those mirrored versions of themselves, leaned forward, expectant. "All right," Riley whispered, her voice shaking. "Let's give them a performance they'll never forget." The usher stepped back, into the shadows. The theater around them began to shift again, but this time they were in control. The stage molded to their thoughts. The velvet seats receded. The golden balconies twisted into cliff sides. Storm clouds roiled where once chandeliers glowed. They'd created a world, from pain, from memory, from sheer will. And then, the show began. Malik stood center stage, surrounded by a forest of prop trees, except they weren't props anymore. The scent of moss, the chirp of ghostly birds, the shimmer of unnatural moonlight, made it feel terrifyingly real. He stepped forward, his hands bound by glowing chains. "I am the forgotten," he declared, the lines forming as he spoke them. "The orphaned son of tragedy. But I choose not to mourn. I choose to fight." A thunderclap rolled across the set. The chains on his wrists shattered, sending sparks into the air. The audience gasped. Hundreds of versions of himself clapped silently, mouths moving but no sound emerging. Then the scene melted. Now Alex stood at the top of a crumbling tower of spotlight lenses and shattered mirrors, wind howling around him. A figure approached. The director, reformed and furious, made of static and shredded script. "You think you can rewrite your fate?" the director sneered. Alex held up the blood script, now half-filled. "I already am." He stepped off the tower, fell faster and slammed into the stage below, which turned into an ocean of torn curtains. They absorbed the impact like water and he rose unharmed. The audience erupted in a frenzy of silent applause. "Not bad," Riley muttered, stepping forward. "My turn." Her scene erupted into existence. A crumbling opera house, flames licking the ceiling, violins playing out of tune, chandeliers crashing around her. She walked through it like a queen, unbothered. A mirror figure stepped from the flames, her past self. "You abandoned your dreams," it hissed. "You let fear win." "No," she replied, eyes blazing. "I just needed to find a new stage." She grabbed her double and threw it into the orchestra pit. The violins exploded into black feathers. The script flared, 3/4 full now. The theater began to tremble again. But this time it wasn't collapsing. It was expanding, reacting to their energy. They weren't trapped. They were ascending. Malik, Riley, and Alex stood center stage, together, united. And yet, the usher reappeared in the wings. Expression unreadable. "You've performed well," he said. "But this theater still demands a final act. One soul must stay behind, or all are lost." The audience froze. So did the stage. The exit reappeared in the distance, burning bright red. It began to tick as if on a timer. 1 minute, then it would close. Permanently. "No," Riley whispered. "Not this again. There must be another way." Malik shouted. "There is," the usher replied, revealing a second parchment. "A rewrite. But only one of you may use it. One of you can alter the story completely, at a cost." The three stared at each other. Torn. The stage rumbled. The audience figures began to scream. No sound. But their mouths stretched open. Eyes leaking ink. They were unraveling, coming apart at the seams. Time was nearly up. Alex stepped forward, toward the exit, then stopped. "No," he said, turning. "I won't choose. Not like this." Riley clutched the second parchment. "Maybe we don't have to. What if we all sign it together?" The usher raised an eyebrow. "No one's ever tried that." "Then let's be the first." Together, they took the parchment. Together, they pricked their fingers, 3 drops of blood, one from each. As the blood hit the page, it ignited. A great rumble echoed through the chamber. The exit door burst open. A blinding light filled the room. The audience vanished. The usher stumbled back, shielding his eyes. "You've rewritten the end." And just like that, they were gone, or so it seemed, because when the light faded, they were still on stage, but different. Riley was dressed in an unfamiliar costume, a futuristic rebel uniform. Malik wore a crown of thorns and cybernetic armor. Alex held a blade of pure sound. The theater around them had changed. No longer Victorian, no longer cursed. Now it was a new world entirely, and on the script, only one line remained. AC. Acid, but the show must go on. The usher stepped forward, clapping slowly. "Well done," he said. "You've created a new act, a new story. But remember," he raised a finger, his smile returning, "every show has a final curtain." The lights dimmed. A new audience appeared. Strangers. Unknown. Waiting. Eager. The curtain rose again, and the next performance began.
The curtain rose, one last time. But the world beyond the velvet folds was no longer made of wood and stage props. Instead, it unfolded into a city suspended in a perpetual dusk. Skyscrapers, built of red curtains and spotlight beams, streets paved with old scripts, and people with blank faces, wandering like sleepwalkers. This wasn't the theater anymore. It was the script. And the script had consumed everything. Riley, Alex, and Malik stood at the center of a plaza, beneath a massive clock tower ticking backward. On its face, the words "final performance." They weren't just performers now, they were fragments of the story itself, stitched into its seams. Each step they took shifted the city around them, like walking through a dream that was trying to forget itself. "Where are we?" Riley whispered, her voice barely audible over the ticking. Alex stared upward. "I think we're inside the rewrite. We gave up the stage, but the story needed to continue. So it created this." Malik squinted toward a rising staircase ahead, spiraling infinitely toward a glowing door high in the sky. "There's our exit. Real one this time." But the moment he took a step, the ground splintered, erupting in a scream. A massive crack zigzagged through the plaza, and something began to crawl out of it. The director, no longer just a being, it was now an idea, formless and vast. Its voice coming from every shadow. "You cannot outrun an ending," it hissed. "You defied your roles, you rewrote the climax. But the theater is eternal, and you are its property." Tentacles made of camera reels burst from the pavement, grabbing at their leg. The sky above turned black, the city disassembling itself like torn paper. From the buildings, faceless stagehands dropped down, crawling toward them with bone-thin arms,
and gaping mouths full of ticket stubs. Riley threw a metal pipe from the debris and smashed a stagehand's head in. It crumpled like a rotten mask, dissolving into ash. "We're not trapped anymore, we made this world." Alex pulled Malik to his feet and pointed toward the staircase. "That door. It's still there. We go now or we never go." The stairs groaned beneath them as they climbed, hundreds of feet above the crumbling city. Below, the director's tendrils slithered upward, smashing buildings and unraveling scripts that screamed as they burned. With every step, the staircase changed. Metal turned to bone, to typewriter keys, to bleeding parchment. At the top, the glowing door pulsed like a heartbeat. They reached it barely, but there, blocking the final step, was the usher, still dressed in his gray suit, but now his face was blank. A mirror. "You have one chance," he said. "One final choice. Beyond this door lies your escape, true freedom, but it must be earned." He raised a hand. 3 golden tickets appeared, floating midair. "Only one of you may leave. That rule hasn't changed. The rewrite created the journey, but the ending must follow tradition. One door, one survivor." Silence. Then Riley, without hesitation, took a step forward. "I won't fight you," she said softly, "but I'm choosing." Alex grabbed her arm. "We said we'd make a new ending." Malik took one of the tickets, stared at it. "Maybe we already did." He looked at the usher. "What if none of us choose?" The usher tilted his head. "Then the story loops again. You return to the beginning. The curse resets. Time rewinds." "No," Alex said. "There has to be more." Then from behind them, the director roared, now a swirling storm of voices and ink. Its tendrils reached the top of the stairwell, smashing through the usher's chest. The usher didn't scream. He simply looked surprised and vanished in a flash of white light. The tickets dropped. The door cracked. The director rose, and the final act began. Act 8, the end and the echo. The stage collapsed around them as the city was devoured by darkness. Time unraveled, seconds slipping like water through fingers. Their bodies began to fade, their outlines glowing like embers. Riley turned to them, tears in her eyes. "If one of us has to go, it should be you," she told Malik. "You fought harder than anyone." "No," Malik said. "Alex is the one who saw the truth first. He should be the one." Alex looked at them both, heart pounding. Then he did something no one expected. He picked up all 3 tickets and threw them through the door. It burst wide open, light flooding the stairwell like a tidal wave, engulfing the director, burning its limbs away in shrieking agony. The sky cracked in half. The pages of the script scattered like snow. All 3 of them were lifted into the air. The staircase shattered beneath them. The theater ended. When Alex awoke, he was on a park bench. The air smelled like rain. People bustled by, unaware. A dog barked. A child laughed. He looked to his left. Riley sat beside him, sipping coffee. To his right, Malik, staring up at the sky. "We made it?" Alex asked. "I think so," Riley said. But they turned. Behind them stood an old brick building, cracked windows, a rotting marquee, the faded words barely visible, now playing echoes of a show that never ends. Alex shivered. "It's still here." Malik stood, brushing off his jacket. "Maybe it always will be, but it doesn't own us anymore." A soft breeze passed. They turned and walked away. The theater doors creaked open behind them, and inside, a new script floated down onto the stage, blank, waiting. The ended. Did you enjoy the final act of this cursed tale? What would you do if you were given one ticket to freedom and had to leave your friends behind? If this story chilled your spine and kept your heart pounding, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for more eerie episodes from Beyond the Curtain. And remember, the show never really ends. Not here. Not ever. What tales should we tell next? Let us know in the comments.